Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm Will, and this is the Movie Files here on the Till the Last Credit YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk to you about two movies that have a very similar subject matter. Those movies are Tombstone and Wyatt Earp. Now, interestingly enough, both these movies started out as the same movie. Originally, Kevin Costner was cast to play Wyatt Earp in Tombstone. He had a falling out with the screenwriter over the direction in which the film should take. Costner felt that it should be about Wyatt Earp, and that Wyatt Earp should be the focus of the film. The screenwriter of Tombstone felt that it should be about the events, and so there were many people, many characters that were the focal point of the film. And so Kevin Costner decided to leave Tombstone and go produce his own movie. Now, these movies came out 6 months apart. Tombstone came out first in December of 1993, and Wyatt Earp followed in the summer of 1994. Now, Kevin Costner had tried to use his, at the time, considerable clout in Hollywood as a big A-list movie star to keep distributors from picking up Tombstone, which affected that movie's casting. A lot of the actors that appeared in Wyatt Earp might have actually been cast in Tombstone had Kevin Costner not done this. Now, it ended up not working out to Costner's favor, as Tombstone made a lot of money and Wyatt Earp was a box office failure, but there are a lot of factors that go into that. First of all, Wyatt Earp is over 3 hours. It's a 3-hour and 10-minute film. In 1994, there weren't a lot of theaters that wanted to show a 3-hour film because it cut down on how many showings you could have in a day. And they also felt, well, we just had this Wyatt Earp movie here a few months ago. We don't need this one. So because of that, Wyatt Earp ended up being a box office failure, which is unfortunate because for me, it's the better film. For me, Wyatt Earp is the better film, although both movies have their charms and their drawbacks. Both films are very well written, very well directed, very well produced, very well cast. Both films have very strong casts. Now, some of the characters are played better or written better in one movie or the other. In a perfect world, we'd like to have a movie that takes the best elements from both and the best cast from both and kind of mixes and matches them. But unfortunately, that's not how it happened. That might have been the movie we had gotten had Costner and the screenwriter of Tombstone been able to get along and work better together, but ultimately that wasn't the film that we got. Tombstone, as the name would imply, focuses very much on the gunfight at the OK Corral, the Earp's time in Tombstone, Arizona, and the Earp Vendetta ride, which was the aftermath of the gunfight at the OK Corral. Wyatt Earp focuses on Wyatt Earp's entire life. So you get to see him briefly as a teenager and then as a young man. You get to feel the tragedy of him losing his first wife to typhoid and probably his only true love until he actually met his third wife, Josephine, in Tombstone. And he was actually married to her for almost 50 years until his death in 1929. Wyatt Earp is also the much more historically accurate film. However, where Tombstone does deviate from the historical record, it's because the deviations make for a much more cinematic film. So while Wyatt Earp is definitely an epic and is much more historically accurate, Tombstone is a more cinematic film. It's a more Hollywood film, and it's a more dramatic film in a lot of ways.
Both movies are complete nonsense.
For example, in Wyatt Earp, and this is how it happened in real life as well, in Wyatt Earp, the Earps all fell back into law enforcement almost immediately after moving to Tombstone. In Tombstone, they don't. They are courted by officials to try and get them back into law enforcement, and they're all saying, no, we don't want to. That's not why we're here. We're here to get rich. We're businessmen. We're not lawmen anymore. And it isn't until the murder of Marshall White that by Curly Bill Brochies that Virgil first and Morgan decide to go become marshals. And then it isn't until the gunfight at the OK Corral, literally minutes before the gunfight, that Wyatt Earp finally looks at Morgan or looks at Virgil and says, "I think you better deputize me." And that line right there is a very cinematic line. It's very dramatic. That's the line that says shit's about to go down. You don't get that line in Wyatt Earp because Wyatt Earp is much more historically accurate. So in Wyatt Earp, as soon as they go to Tombstone, they're already lawmen again, and they're trying to break away from it. But they've become lawmen just to get that paycheck until their mines pay off, their water rights pay off, whatever get-rich-quick scheme that Wyatt Earp has come up with this week pays off. And they never do pay off. And the Earps, have gone down in history as lawmen. Now, it's funny that Costner left the picture Tombstone because it focused on too many characters. Because Wyatt Earp, while Wyatt is the main focus of that film, it does also focus on a large cast. It's definitely an ensemble picture. And but the movies focus on different casts, different characters. So in Wyatt Earp, you get a much more intimate look into the Earp family. You get to know the brothers a lot more. The brother James, who was a saloon keeper, was completely omitted from Tombstone. That character's not even in that film. And you get this sense of how much family meant to Wyatt Earp and his brothers, and that nothing was stronger than family. The Wyatt Earp film also focuses a lot more. You get to know the Earp wives a lot better. In Tombstone, they're just kind of there, but in Wyatt Earp, they're very central characters. Now, in Tombstone, you get to know the Cowboys a lot better. And when I say Cowboys, I'm referring specifically to a gang at the time known as the Cochise County Cowboys. Today we think of cowboy as a generic term for any Old West figure. That wasn't the case back then. Back then, cowboys were outlaws. They were cattle rustlers. It was a very derogatory term to call somebody a cowboy, especially if they weren't. So in this video, when I refer to cowboys, I'm referring specifically to that gang who historically has been recognized as probably the first example of organized crime in America. They were very much a gang. They were very much the Old West Mafia in Cochise County, Arizona. And in Tombstone, you get to know them a lot more. You get to really get to know the Cowboys. And Curly Bill Brochies is an actual character. And Wyatt Earp, he shows up a couple of times and he's name dropped a few times, but he's not really a character. In Tombstone, he's one of the more iconic characters. Now, and you'll even see he's a meme all over the internet. Well, bye. That line is a meme all over the internet. Now, another difference between the two, where Tombstone I feel has the edges, in Doc Holliday. Now, Doc Holliday again is played much more true to form, much more historically accurate in Wyatt Earp, and he's really played to perfection by Dennis Quaid in that film. But there's something about Tombstone's Doc Holliday, played by Val Kilmer, that has just become really an American staple. Everybody can quote lines from Tombstone, from Doc Holliday. And that's because he was written as a much more charming character, much more charming than he was in real life. He's very witty. He comes off as a nice guy. He seems like a guy that you could go have a beer with. Where in Wyatt Earp, you wonder how Wyatt Earp was ever friends with this guy, because he's a wife beater, he's a drunk, he's an asshole. In Tombstone, you never get to see that abusive side of Doc Holliday. And I think that makes the character much, much more likable. Now, in real life, The real Doc Holliday was a bit of both. When he was sober, he was the charming, dapper guy that you'd want to hang out with. But once he had a few and started to get drunk, then he became the abusive prick that you just wanted to take out back and dunk his head in the horse trough, which Wyatt Earp does in Wyatt Earp. Both movies are wonderful. They really are. And they present different sides of the film or of the story. Even though a lot of times a lot of the same story points are hit on, and in a lot of ways they're hit on in the same way, there are far more story points that are hit on in Tombstone or hit on in Wyatt Earp and not the other. Or the way that they're told in one is better than the way that they're told in the other. These, instead of rival films, these should really be seen as companion films. When, for my money, like I said, Wyatt Earp is the better film, but watching Tombstone gives you a much better understanding of Wyatt Earp because you get to know the things that Wyatt Earp leaves out. So really, the bottom line is that they're both great movies. They're both worth seeing. They're both worth owning. In fact, I would recommend, if you've never seen either of these movies, I would definitely recommend that you watch Tombstone first and then Wyatt Earp, because like I said, having seen Tombstone will give you a much better appreciation of Wyatt Earp. Well, that's all I have for today. Leave your comments in the comments section below. Which movie do you like better? Do you love them both? Do you love one, hate the other? Do you hate them both? If you hate them both, you're un-American. So, but anyway, leave your comments in the comments section below. Thanks for listening, and have a nice day.